Welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast, where faith meets the front lines of culture.
We break down what's happening in the world, what's behind it, and how believers can stand strong in truth.
We're not here to fear the times, we're here to understand them.
Because being watchmen means staying awake, staying ready, and staying grounded in the Word.
Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to the Modern Watchman podcast with Tom and Wendy. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things going on in the world. Some things that jumped. What do you want to talk about? What do you have on your mind?
Gold hit $4,000 an ounce.
What is for someone who doesn't follow gold, what was it a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
That's a good question. I can actually pull that up real quick. I mean, I know generally, but I don't want to be like super.
So as you're pulling that up, 4,000 an ounce would be an all-time high.
Yeah.
Ever in the history of gold existing on Earth.
It's pretty crazy. It's a big deal in a lot of ways. Of course, things aren't going to work right now. There we go.
And silver also being near an all-time high. But not nearly at that.
Yeah, it's a little over $48 right now.
$48, wow.
Yeah.
We bought it in Nevada for like what?
15?
Yeah, $15. And that was 8 years ago, 10 years ago. That's silver specifically. What's remarkable about it is not just the fact that it's at an all-time high or that it's going up, but
crazy.
that it doesn't seem to be connected to something specific. So you see, precious metals rise when the things are uncertain, or like during COVID or whatever, like when there's a little bit of a movement of people hedging their bets and moving to something a little bit more that, something that's stable and isn't erratic and is only going to increase in value. You're not going to see silver ever go to nothing. You're not going to see gold ever go to nothing, right? So that's sometimes people will move their money into something like that when things are a little bit what's going on in the world. But there's not something very specific happening right now.
Well, I mean, there is and there isn't, but like it's starting to defy the typical patterns and just go
up,
steadily up,
not be erratic.
Now, this period of time, we're talking about maybe a few months, 6 months, a year, depending on how big of a picture you want to draw back out. But what we're seeing is like central banks are buying gold, and there's a lot of potential reasons for that. I think there are a lot of reasons for that.
What is a central bank?
Central bank is in the United States. We have the Federal Reserve, which, if you've ever heard, like the Federal Reserve is not federal.
It's private.
It's a private consortium group of banks.
What's that word you said?
Consortium.
Never heard it.
CONSORTIUM. Consortium.
I can spell words I made up too.
I just wanted to verify that not only did I know it was a word, but I'm pretty sure I know how to spell it.
What does consortium mean?
I think of it as like a group or collaboration of things,
okay.
Like a group of, in this case, a group of banks come together and, sort of set policy for lending money for the United States government kind of thing. And
decide
there are central banks
rates and such
for every nation, basically, that kind of decide, they decide kind of how to hold their nation's wealth, like how to hold their debt, in what form. So like, we have the dollar and we get to print the dollar, but other countries that have maybe a weaker currency, they might choose to hold dollars instead of their own currency because there's more
value
and more stability in it.
Sure.
Does that make sense? And so we're actually getting to the point here. This is great. This is basically boiling it down to so when people don't really know where to run with a better asset, a treasury bond from the United States, holding dollars, whatever, they go to gold. And so another thing that, and again, I'm not saying this as a prediction, but this is what has been said in relation to like times that the world goes towards gold, is prior to war. When and the reason for this, I'll give you an example actually, because like pre-World War II, what was Portugal was trying to buy, no, I'm sorry, Germany, Hitler was trying to buy some stuff from Portugal. I can't remember what it was, but he said he'd pay in British pounds, which at the time, the British pound was like arguably better than the dollar. It was like it was the currency of currencies back then. And so the Portuguese sold them this military stuff. I forget what it was, but whatever it was something Hitler really wanted. And he was having a hard time kind of getting what he needed because he was already kind of on the outs with the Allies, with the rest of Europe. And he delivered pallets of British pounds to the Portuguese, and the Portuguese, like, they went for another order, and the Portuguese were like, hold on a minute, where are you getting all these British pounds? And turns out the Germans had forged them. And that's just one example, but like,
what? I've never heard that story.
What do you do when like lines are being drawn and you're really not sure who your friend or your enemy is going to be, and when dollars currency can be weaponized, right? Like when Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States froze all their assets and stuff. So like, what do you do when you're not really sure how things are going to shake out, or you have some uncertainty? You go to gold. Gold is the thing that will see you through. You'll be able to get whatever you need from friend or foe during times of uncertainty. And when the dust settles, you'll be able to turn it back into whatever currency or asset class you want to turn it into then. And so and again, I am not saying like, because gold is going up, we're headed towards war, but that is one of the things that people kind of look at, because oftentimes governments, nations move towards gold during those type of precursor times to massive uncertainty. Is there anything more uncertain than war, as far as just that goes? But the central banks are the ones that hold, kind of, they decide what to hold the nation's wealth and debt in. And gold is the asset of first and last resort. Like the thing is gold, they don't hold as much gold when they have confidence in other things. Usually when the economy is doing really well, they'll buy treasury bonds in the United States Treasury, or something like that, that'll pay an interest. Gold doesn't pay an interest, but it can go up in value, but it can also go down in value if things get better. So it's but overall, the interesting thing when you look at historically speaking, it is, to go back to our last question, why didn't that work? How do I have no connection? We have to be our own producer here,
If I could get something in the chat.
We're trying to hire somebody who can. All right.
What are you looking up?
Just, you had mentioned earlier, like what was gold a year ago, that kind of thing. So it started, so right now it's trading at $4,023 an ounce. It was below 4,000 this morning when I was driving into town.
And when I talked to you on the phone on the way home 2 hours ago, it was 4,012. Yes.
Now, again, there's gonna be some of this, like and silver's done a lot of that too, but the overall,
what was it a year ago?
A year ago, it was 25.15,
which was high.
So it's up 60% in a year. That's crazy. And it's up 168% in the last 5 years. And even, if you look at even the last month, it's up 10%. Those are big moves for gold to make. Gold is usually that slow and steady kind of paces inflation, holds value. It's a holder of value, generally speaking. Now, this is my opinion. I think we're seeing the revaluation of gold in relation to the devaluation of the dollar. And that's the biggest thing that...
Which we've been saying for a long time.
And, yeah, I mean, Ron Paul said it, and, I guess you can be 15.
It's been happening for a long time. It's kind of like very slow and then all at once. You have these jumps of reality, the Ukraine war and that whole situation being a big jump. Different debt thresholds that we've hit are big indicators of, wow, we are way out over our skis. Lots of indicators over the last
for
years.
example, we're getting really, really close to paying $1 trillion a year in interest on our debt.
That's insane.
Now, mind you, that is not paying off debt. That is paying it.
Mitigating.
That's not the minimum payment. That's like if you have an interest-only loan, those loans that you're not supposed to really get. If you have an interest-only loan, $1 trillion in interest, and
Or have we stopped overspending?
No, we're going to spend about $7 trillion this year, and we're going to take in, is it like 4.9 or 4 trillion? I should know more specifically, but we're taking in like 4 trillion and we're spending 7 trillion. And that's in 1 year. 1 year. And of course, this stuff, it's a snowball effect, right? Like if you spend $3 trillion more than you take in this year, and then you add that to the interest, it's going to catch up to us faster and faster and faster. And
these numbers
it's
are
funny
hard
because
to conceptualize.
10 years ago, I was much more the alarmist, like run for the hills, this is going to happen. And as we're today, when I actually see it unfolding, I'm much calmer about it, but I don't think it's any less serious. Like, if anything, it is actually happening, which it was happening then, but it's happening faster and more visibly now. Like now, you're not someone who's going, hey, I think I see the numerical indicators on the horizon. Now it's like everybody sees it in their everyday life. And what the point I want to get to about this is the sooner that we grasp this as Americans, and when I mean grasp it, I mean like soak it in. So like, let me give you an example. We bought land in Tennessee for about $2,300 an acre, Wild. And,
that was 8-9 years ago.
8-9 years ago. And now let's just say it's $15,000 an acre. And we have this, this bias where it's like $15,000 an acre. That's a ripoff. I'm not buying more land at $15,000 an acre. I bought it for $2,300 an acre, and it's like,
I'm going to wait till it comes back down.
And even if it's like that's a whole nother fallacy. And I'm not talking about like the real estate bubbles, because like, sure, we could have an economic downturn. Maybe land goes back down to $8,000 an acre. But like the same thing with gold and these things. Like the point is they're generally creeping up. And so when I say we need to grasp this, what I mean is that like we need to understand that it will never be this cheap again. And so
this cheap. Today cheap.
That's the general gist of it. And when I say that, I mean
$15,000 an acre is the cheapest.
I mean, we have bought precious metals at multiple different prices. We didn't buy like only at $15. And it's always hard for me to click the buy button at the highest price I've ever paid for it, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm paying double what I paid before or whatever, right? And that's really hard. But here's the thing. When gold's $10,000 an ounce, or even $6,000, you wish you could buy it at $4,000, And so Cokes were a nickel once, then they were a quarter.
They're never going to be a nickel again.
Then they were 50 cents. I mean, in my lifetime, I can remember when you could get sodas for
I used to put $5 in my gas
at Walmart for a can of soda.
And that would work out for about half the week. I'd be running on my $5 of gas.
There's
Those days are behind us.
the sooner we can grasp those things, we will be more effective and we won't be
Prepared.
stunned. Because what happens to the masses of people is they have that effect hits them and they go, I'm not buying a house right now. I'm not going to buy this right now. I'm going to wait for gold to go back down to 2,500
or cars or, whatever it might be.
And again, I'm not just saying go out and buy everything, but my point is that the sooner we wrap our heads around that this is the quote unquote new normal, you'll actually be better off. And it's an exercise. Like I have to constantly try, and it's really hard to rewire my brain of no, what if that is the cheapest? Land might be $20,000 an acre. I'm going, well, and with my own eyes, I've seen land that's $60,000 an acre in another part of the country. So when my kids are older and the dollar keeps devaluing, I mean, it's crazy to us now, but $100,000 an acre or more might be the norm because it's not about how worth it is. How much value there is in the land. The value is in relation to what we purchase it with.
Yeah.
So, and this is good. I know this is a lot, but
keep it going.
Why do people own gold? Because it typically holds that value up. You don't typically when people say I invest in gold. You can do that, I guess. And now in this last year and 5 years was a really good time to invest in gold. But what gold is it's something that will always hold its value. So stocks can go to zero. There's all sorts of assets that can go to zero. Banks can fail, currencies can fail. But as long as humans have been around, gold has had value. And without going crazy deep into it, what gold is it's a measurement of energy and resources to extract it out of the ground. Does that make sense? And silver's an even better one for this in a way. And this is just an example of why is it worth anything? It's just a yellow rock. Well, now let's switch to silver. Silver's the most conductive metal in the world. It's the most conductive metal.
Very useful.
It has properties that are helpful in the medical field, in computer systems, technology systems, motherboards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of value in
Chips.
it. Well, it costs something to extract it out of the earth. So if you're going to...
Also, it's a limited resource.
It's everything's a limited resource in that realm.
Yeah.
It's not renewable per se. And so it's whatever it costs to extract out of the earth is the absolute minimum value of it, right? At any given time. And so, that's why it's worth something. That's just a quick primer on what gives it value. Why is it just a yellow rock or a silver rock? No, there's uses for it. And
a minimum value threshold.
A minimum value threshold of human labor and energy to get it. But why people invest in gold is, and I don't have some of these right off the top of my head, but you can Google it. It's actually kind of fun. Google it. You can chat GPT it, as we would say now. But how much something cost in gold, you can go all the way back to Roman times or something. And it's
the same.
It's fascinating how much it parallels all the way to this day.
Meaning this much gold bought a suit in the 20s and that much gold still buys a suit today.
So, and that's actually one of the sayings.
Yeah.
An ounce of gold bought a nice suit. I don't know the year, but say in 1920. Well, guess what?
That's
An
what I
ounce
just
of
said.
Gold. You said 1920?
I did.
Oh,
I said that.
you nailed it, honey.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
But you can say it again if you want to.
You're amazing. You nailed it.
So that's why people buy gold, because the value isn't erratic.
And it'll buy an ounce of gold would buy
keeps
a
its
nice
value.
suit today. And that's the idea.
You had to finish.
I had to finish
You had
that.
to keep going. Okay. So that's one thing that is happening right now as far as newsworthy that isn't necessarily maybe making it into your the rounds of your information consumption is the gold and the silver. And it's interesting, maybe this is a segue. It's interesting you mentioned it happening prior to war, because there is a possibility of a conflict that's emerging a little bit under the radar with Venezuela. And I don't really know much at all about why that's bubbling up, but I do know that it is, and you brought it up, so why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
I mean, you guys probably heard like the Trump administration has ordered like the Department of War to come down on whatever you want to say, start to interdict the...
Interdict?
I think that's the word.
Brand new word
I'm
for
going to spell it.
Oh, I'm sure you could spell it.
Somebody is going to spell check me. I'm not sure if I'm right on all of them, but I feel pretty good. The Department of War is to interdict the drug trafficking from the cartels from Mexico, Central America, and South America.
Because they've been engaging different ships out there, or boats.
Well, the boats have been coming from Venezuela.
Okay.
Now,
all of them.
It's a pretty popular thing, and like generally, I totally agree that the whole fentanyl thing has to be stopped, and this is one of those things where we have to be able to like hold two ideas again, that like, yes, it is good to stop the flow of drugs coming from China via Mexico, or China via Venezuela, or even like Iran via Venezuela. There's a lot of like, our enemies are using, I would call it fifth generation warfare. If I don't know if that's a whole nother...
Destabilize us internally. Erratically.
Wars are waged in different ways too now. Like there's not just kinetic wars, but China knows that there is a massive burden placed on the United States. Not only do they make a bunch of money when they sell drugs into the United States, but they know it also...
Sell drugs.
Specifically
illegal
fentanyl.
Drugs, yeah.
Illegal drugs.
Not pharma.
They make a bunch of money, and it destabilizes and erodes our culture and weighs on our medical system, weighs on our EMS system. It
destabilizes
our families. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's a brilliant strategy. It fills our prisons. I mean, come on. Like, if you really think about it, it's like an incredible tactic or strategy to employ against an enemy. And there is, I think there is no doubt that China and probably Iran have both
open channels of drugs into the country.
Absolutely. I think that's actually pretty darn provable. And so like, I do support the ending of that. Absolutely.
And it's like the deterrent of that also. Like, it's not just like, when you start to take action like this, it is not just a means to an end, but it's also a deterrent, or it's meant to be.
What do you mean?
Like, not only are we taking action on this one example, but like we will take action and escalate that action, which is what leads us to possibly.
Well, my concern is the verbiage, or not the verbiage, just the conversation that the administration is using around the Venezuelan president, or whatever he calls himself, Maduro. He's 100% a bad guy. There's no doubt about that. And is probably like and again, I don't have like the proof, but I actually don't doubt what we're being told by the Trump administration in relation to him he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy, and he's willing to work with Iran and China, it sounds like, to be a bad guy, be a facilitator of either the manufacturing of some of these drugs safely inside of his borders and then trafficked north from there. And maybe he's taking the end product in and then just helping traffic. But it sounds very likely that he is willing and actively doing that. Now, at the same time, the way that the Trump administration officials, I've heard them talk about Maduro, it's under the guise of drug interdiction, but I'm hearing a lot of the regime change, neocon kind of verbiage around
we need to
remove him, and they've already put like a carrier task force group. I don't know that there's actually like an aircraft carrier, but there's an assault carrier which has like Marines on board and a group of naval ships somewhere off the coast of Venezuela. Like I'm sure they're out in the ocean, but like we have moved
into position,
and they're talking a very serious talk in a very like veiled way that I'm kind of like, I wouldn't be surprised if we wake up one morning and either there's like bombing of mainland Venezuela occurring, not by drones, but possibly by like a military aircraft. I mean, drones are that too, but you know what I mean? Like manned military aircraft, or even like Marines on the beach or something crazy like that. Now that's probably less likely, and we'll probably see the bombing by drones first and the bombing by manned aircraft after that, and then they'll get to more of something like that. But it's concerning to me just like, what are we doing? How did we wake up on the precipice of war with Venezuela? You know, and again, like, I'm not defending Maduro.
Why is nobody talking about it?
Why are we like allowing ourselves to get this close to it with very little conversation about it? And I actually think we're a lot closer than the administration has let on. Like we're the talking points are around drug interdiction, but we're hearing these veiled
interdiction.
I'm going to keep saying it because it's the correct word.
You are going to keep saying it.
But we keep hearing these veiled references to regime change. And actually, I heard a clip today where they kind of got called out on it, and the response from whoever it was, I forget if it was Stephen Miller or someone else, I don't know, whoever, but basically it was like, the Trump administration doesn't do regime change. We don't do that stuff that these old neocons did, Warhawks did, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, but you're kind of talking out of the side of your mouth because you're literally saying the same things, but then just saying we don't do that. But it's weird. So I don't know. That's something to keep your eye on. And
that could be why gold is going up. Possibly. Could be connected.
I mean, there's so many things, you guys. Not to be doom and gloom, but it's like the war in Ukraine is still going. Europe's headed into another winter with unstable energy costs. Where our economic numbers are not great. Half of Canada. Well, that's another one we should talk about in podcasts. Half of Canada is talking about seceding from Canada. That's a whole another podcast we could talk about. We should try to get someone to come on and talk about that, because I bet we could track someone down. But
well, I have another idea or another thought in this same thread or vein of, like, we were talking about what's going on in Portland, and it's always interesting when you are a student of history, and which you are, and I am newly so. And, you know, even just 2 years ago, we went up to Harper's Ferry and in West Virginia, which is super cool, and you should absolutely go there. It was one of the cooler places that's a little bit obscure and maybe not something that people typically go and see. But I thought it was really cool, and I wished we had more time to spend there. Really beautiful too. Just
really beautiful, yeah.
And to, you know, kind of revisit the history of Harper's Ferry. And do you remember the timing as far as how close to the actual beginning of the Civil War
I think it was like a year almost.
I was going to say 18 months.
Date.
Oh, okay. So essentially, and you do a better honoring of the facts surrounding the story. Surrounding.
John Brown was a like radical abolitionist, and Harper's Ferry was a what did they call it back then? A magazine or something, or like where they stored ammunition and they manufactured rifles for the United States Army. Now, mind you,
Kind of a critical place.
yeah, I mean
It would be critical for the North or the South, depending on. And it did change hands. I think they said like 7 times over the course of the Civil War.
Yeah, it was right in that north-south line because
Yeah.
it's actually really not that far from D.C. and all that. But basically, he was radical abolitionist. Him and 21 followers stormed Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry is at the confluence of the Potomac and, dang it,
Another river.
but it's really pretty because the town is kind of built on a hillside, but like the peninsula comb of a hillside. It's really it's
Very
just a pretty
beautiful.
town to go see for that period, 1800s and older. But the United States did not have a large army at that time, so it was a very significant place from like American military base, whatever you want to say. That's where we built a bunch of our rifles and stuff. And so his idea was to like take this over, steal all this weaponry, and start a slave uprising, and get a bunch of people to join him to free the slaves.
To start the Civil War
To
conflict.
basically
that-
start the
yeah.
Civil War. Now, that was in, that's funny, October 16th through 18th, because it lasted a couple days. They ended up
1859.
1859. So, and then he was hanged on December 2nd. He was like one of the few survivors. Almost all his guys died. And on Harper's Ferry, you can go see like where they held up in this particular, I think it was the firehouse, right? Or something.
It didn't go well. They did not succeed.
No, they did not. But it was a very,
A spirit.
it shook the
rebellion.
nation in its own way because, I mean, it was a really serious event.
Shots fired, exchanged between. I mean, it was a precursor battle to the Civil War. It was the angst was already there in the country. There was already this division, and then there's this thing that kind of doesn't. It's a non-starter, although of course he intended for it to be a starter, and it didn't catch the way that he wanted it to catch. But how long?
Almost 1 year to the date.
Okay.
Almost 1 year
That
to the
the
date
Civil
from
War
him
started.
being hung that the Civil War started.
And what was the official start of the Civil War?
Oh, I don't know,
Like
December
what the battle?
2nd or
Like
something.
what? How do we know?
Well,
we've
South
entered?
Carolina, Lincoln won the presidency, I believe. That was a big part. Because remember, Lincoln wasn't
That would have
even
been in November.
in November. Lincoln wasn't even on the ballot in like 13 southern states. So this is something, and actually shout out to Louis C.K. and who's the funny guy? I can't believe I'm forgetting your name. If you ever watch this, you won't, but it'd be hilarious. But these comedians that do a podcast about history, and I'm actually not a huge Louis C.K. fan. I don't mind him knowing that, but this is the best work he's ever done, is a history podcast. But I was actually just listening to this today, believe it or not. Lincoln wasn't on the ballot in 13 states. He
That's
was
so wild
not
to consider.
considered people on both sides on the abolition movement in the North told him, do not take office. You're illegitimate. Like literally both sides felt
just
that
sounds
Lincoln was
familiar.
illegitimate. It was crazy.
And he's a new party. He's introducing the Republican Party.
And this is wild, like, because people were so concerned that just him, and I mean, basically they were right, that they were concerned he would be killed at the inauguration. And actually, there's a, Winfield Scott is the name of the general, but Lincoln went to this general, and he was worried that everyone was so worried about the inauguration, he had to like put the concerns to rest, and basically got this. I think his name was Winfield Scott, was a United States Army general. Went to him and said, "Hey, there's possibly going to be like
An assassination attempt.
assassination
or worse.
attempt or like riots and battles at the inauguration." And everyone was so nervous about that happening. They were literally telling Lincoln, don't even take office. No joke. And so they came up with this plan where they actually told the Capitol Police, I don't know if they were called that back then, to go home. And he recruited in a bunch of police from like Baltimore and these other cities and had them in plain clothes because he didn't want to have to show federal troops in Washington for the inauguration. And they didn't know if they could trust the Capitol Police. So they brought in these like, and mind you, back
They
then,
probably didn't want targets either.
like, have you ever seen what's that movie, Gangs of New York?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the police in these towns back then, in these cities, were like, they were thugs. Like they were basically like, it was not a well-paying job. Not that it's like a great paying job now. It probably should be paid more. But like they were like thugs. Like, and I mean that in the nicest way. I really do. But basically,
Legit.
they knew their way around the underbellies of these things and dealing with gangs and all this stuff. So like he brought these people in to be undercover at the inauguration.
Crazy.
And luckily nothing happened at the inauguration. But
I think that's wild that we faced like the same thing again. There's nothing new under the sun. That Trump there was an attempt to not have him on the ballot in several states. It's like people think this is a new strategy. It's like hilarious. That's wild.
well, and also just like how, yeah, I mean,
That he still won the majority.
Lincoln still won. And I mean,
Then I didn't even know. I mean, I don't remember ever learning in school that the South had their own president. Like, truly seceded and was a separate country according to them for themselves with a president. That's crazy.
all of our Tennessee viewers and listeners are going to be like, what?
Obviously that happened. No, I didn't know. I mean, maybe I did learn that in California, but
The
certainly
Confederate
wasn't
States
nearly
of
the
America.
priority in California to know these things. But I say all this to say, okay, the reason why we're talking about this is when you look through the lens of history, when you are a student of history and you can interpret the times, okay, the modern watchman, you interpret the times, you see the warnings, you look at the patterns, you discern the movements and the goings-ons.
and the Holy Spirit.
And the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
of course. Then you start to go, obviously we did see a movement to have a president legitimately taken off of a ballot. There's been talk of states seceding and doing all kinds of different wild things. Canada seceding, portions of that. Like there's been grumblings of the same angst that was there for years before the Civil War actually broke out. Okay. So we know that. We've seen that. We were talking about today how like however many years ago, I feel like it was pre-2020 even, when there was that issue down in Southern California with the farmer. Was that in Southern
No,
California?
that was outside of northeast of Las Vegas.
Way off. What year was that? Was that before 2020?
Oh yeah, no, this was back when we lived in Nevada. I remember wanting to drive down there,
You're right.
but I had to work.
Okay, so for a decade, let's say, there's been these little moments of pop-up that have been kind of a, pushing us to the brink of is this it? Could
2014, yeah.
2014. Wild. Time is weird. The pushing us up against the brink of okay, are we going to go over the edge? And now to think, I thought we were on the verge of civil war in 2014. Like, what a joke compared to where we're at now, where I'm like, I had no idea we had this far to go before we were truly on the brink. And then how many years is it going to be before we see either a complete new direction or like even further on the brink? But what's happening in Portland right now, it's very similar to what happened in 2020 and this Antifa, anarchy. I mean, it's anarchy, anarchist tyranny. Is that the appropriate term?
Anarcho-tyranny?
Tyranny. Thank you. That's what it is. It's the intimidation and oppressive movement that's disorganized and yet organized. And there's no leader and yet obviously it's led. And it's intimidation and there's connection to state leadership, city boards and city officials, all the way up to the governor, just absolutely allowing this anarchy to play out in the streets, to the point where the federal government is now saying we need to get involved and send in National Guard to reestablish order in the streets, because there's literally riots, or not even riots, like a state of anarchy happening in the city of Portland, that the police are just standing down and not enforcing any laws, not arresting any criminals, just absolutely looking the other way, and in doing so, encouraging it to continue and grow, right? So we're seeing this conflict, and again, it's reminiscent to me, which is why we brought up Harper's Ferry. We've already seen these attacks on ICE, what are they called? Facilities.
Yeah. Detention centers.
Yeah, detention centers is the word I was looking for. Where there has been shots fired. Like, there has been little skirmishes, if you will, between two sides of an engagement that are both civilian forces. Like, what's the best way to say that? Like, this is not, this would be an upgrade to, no, this is federal agents. The ICE agents are federal agents versus civilians in Portland. Now we're looking at federal agents.
ICE agents are federal, yeah.
But I mean, the National Guard would be
sure,
against civilians. It's wild that we're getting to this place that is, again, looking through the lens of history, Harper's Ferry being a whole year before the actual engagement of civil war. There's this little moment of this like more intense skirmish, and it just makes me go, is that where we're at? Are we?
I don't think we're at a brink, but I think when you draw back, it's the same way that like 15 years ago, Ron Paul was screaming from the rooftops, the dollar's going to be devalued. We're heading towards hyperinflation. I think
it takes longer to get there than you think.
Yes, but where are we headed? Are we going?
Yeah.
Are we more unified, or are we less unified? Like that. That's the obvious answer. But like,
well, like I said, I thought in 2014 we were on the brink. We were so not on the brink.
It's like the price of gold. It kind of goes up because we've had 2020 and 2021 where the cities were being burned down, and people have been
settles down
at each other's throats, and it settled down, but it never settled down.
Never settled down to where it was
like
before.
The left and the right dichotomy in the United States is as bad as ever, but it never got. Post-COVID, it never got better than it was before COVID. And, I think I'm not so much saying, there's two things. One is really the most important part to me is, again, holding, like the way I want to use our voice here is that, there's more like depth to these things that we need to understand. We need to be able to hold kind of two conflicting thoughts at the same time. Like I was saying to Wendy earlier, like, of course I'm for, like, we cannot put up with Antifa burning
our
cities down. We are a nation of
terrorizing
laws.
Civilians.
We are a nation of laws, and we cannot exist in a vacuum of chaos where every emotionally charged nut job on either side of the political spectrum, I'm not choosing sides, but gets to just lash out and burn things down every time they're upset. Right. I don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. That's how it is. But at the same, so that can't be allowed. And at the same time, I mean, people
would never be okay.
People have died for this nation, and that we are not a nation that have federal troops
rolling out on its citizens,
right? And so it's okay to be like, this is wrong and this is wrong. We don't have to always fall on like the party lines, because remember, we're being fed a narrative to fall on this side or that side. And so
say this is fully justified, correct, and right, and let's go.
And what we have to start seeing, like the whole like we got to see through this veil, because you have the left is the puppet that is creating the chaos, and then the right, in this case, is creating the solution to the chaos that is more federal power. You see what I'm saying? So like,
which the right would usually never agree to.
but it's irrelevant because
manipulated
it's
the
how
situation.
it's being used right now,
Right.
whether we like it or not. And it's like, we have to start seeing this as there is a system that is creating there's a system that is creating the circumstances of this chaos on our streets, that then it's chaos and solution, right? And then they bring in this solution that we would otherwise not be okay with. So we just have to, I mean, don't get me wrong.
Realize how you're being manipulated.
We have to have eyes to see that and go, and again, there's not always something that we can do about it directly, other than not fully take the worm hook, line, and sinker, like to understand and go, call it what it is. Yes, that's wrong, but this is wrong too. And start to identify how we can either push back on both of them or prop up and support leaders who are calling it what it is.
Yeah.
The few and far between. The Ron Pauls, in this case nowadays, the Thomas Masseys and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and that kind of stuff, is we can lend our support.
And that's the end of the list.
Oh man.
It is an interesting thing to hold that I think even before 2020, I've noticed a shift in, you used to be able to be perfectly good friends with, and again, some people manage to do this still, used to be perfectly good friends with people who held opposing political views. That's becoming more and more challenging the more rooted in the various political views people are becoming. If you are still a lukewarm, I don't really follow stuff, I don't know what's going on, you probably have no trouble navigating conversations with someone who might disagree with you on something, so long as they are also kind of not paying attention and very lukewarm on things. But if you really are very anchored and understand where your values are coming from and why you're standing on them, it is becoming more and more challenging to be in close, intimate relationships with people who hold opposing value points. Again, if you're truly rooted in those values. And I'll go further to say, I think even before 2020, we might have, I don't know if it was true or if it was a mistaken assumption, that Democrats and Republicans, right, left, conservative, liberals, however you want to say it, we want the same things, but we just have different ideas about how to get there, right? That could have been true maybe before 2020. I'm not even sure if that was true then, but I can tell you right now for sure, we do not actually want the same things. And I say we, and I hate to generalize or loop myself in with a group and put everybody else in a different group. I hate to do that because I don't like to identify with Republicans more than I absolutely have to, right? But conservative-minded Christians do not want the same things as liberal-minded non-Christians. They do not want this world to look the same way. There's a really excellent video of Joy Reid kind of articulating this, and it looks like a joke to someone on the right. It looks like a staged video because she is saying things like, they want to be able to grow a business as big as they want it to grow, make as much profit as they can possibly make. They want to be able to sell their home and not have to pay half of the money to the government. They want to be able to, pass on their assets to their children. And it's like 100%. Yes, that is what I want. And I can tell that you are saying it in the way you're saying it because your entire audience is appalled that is what half of this country wants, right? Legitimately wants. We do not want the same things anymore. We do not want this country to look the same way, and we just think there's different ways to get there. That used to be true in the 80s, maybe in the 90s. It is no longer true. And so that is where you found yourself at the brink of civil war before, is we no longer, when this country was founded, it was founded on the idea that we are holding, like you say, we're holding that we're acknowledging slavery is not the ideal, but it's so ingrained in our culture that we have to move forward with it right now. Like those two things were at the founding of this nation, those two schools of thought. Fast forward however many years, 100 years, that was no longer true. Those two schools of thought had gone in two totally different directions, where people were more anchored in, this is an evil and we need to rid it from our country. And the people on the other side where it's so ingrained in our society and we have to have it and we're willing to keep it. Like that, those two sides, those two competing thoughts have now become two separate ideologies that are no longer compatible with one another. They're no longer compatible with one another. These two groups of people no longer want the same country. They want radically different countries. And what happens? You go to blows, man. That's when you find yourself in civil war.
One side imposes their will on the other at some point.
That's what happens.
It's just...
So, again, looking through the lens of history, we are now at that place again where there are two groups of people who their ideologies are no longer compatible with each other. There is not a shared vision of what this nation could look like if we can come to an agreement and compromise. That isn't true anymore. There is two groups of people that are like, we can no longer compromise. We have to move farther away from each other. And one group is trying to get back to, this is where you hear progressive and conservatism. One group is trying to conserve
values,
or I don't even think, I'm like, what are we conserving? We're way past conserving anything. We want to actually go back in time and re-establish, I think would be a better word. We're not conservatives.
The re-establishment
We're
party.
re-establishers. That's what we are. And then the other side is progressive. They want nothing to do with the founding. They want to untether themselves entirely from it.
And the Constitution.
And the Constitution and all those things. And again, I know I'm saying they and us, and I don't like to use that language, but that is true. And there is a dividing line right down the middle, not down the middle necessarily even groups, but it is stark. That is crazy. That's a hard place to be in a country. And it's hard to see how that's going to reconcile until somebody imposes their will on the other group. And here we are talking about the conservatives would not usually advocate to use federal forces against civilian to enforce their will on the other group. And yet we're being pushed into a corner where it's like, well, what other way out is there? This is the most peaceful way forward. This is the most establishing rule of law way forward that there is without something more catastrophic.
The problem is, and sort of the way this will likely go, is the thing about this democracy is whatever powers you give the government, when the parties change hands, those powers remain, but now in a different party.
And they'll be used.
Along, what Wendy's, saying is we have very different ideas of where to go with this. So inevitably, when the other party takes hold,
they're going to move the other direction.
I will be outraged when federal troops are being used against
peaceful
protesters of the right or something, right? That's like very likely in our situation. That's why, we have to.
But again, we just walked through 4 years of abandoning precedent, it's so hilarious to hear anybody say anything other than no one's above the law, because we had to hear it for 4 years, and weaponization of our government, Arctic frost. We should do a whole episode on that too. That's just like, it was put very clearly in a podcast I was listening to today that Nixon resigned over one instance of surveilling the DNC. One instance. Arctic frost is a massive ongoing surveillance of over 100 right-wing groups, including the GOP, including Turning Point USA, including Catholic churches, ongoing, deeply, it's really wild. It's really crazy. So when you think, okay, Nixon, not too long ago, really, in the grand scheme, resigned over one instance of what Arctic frost, this behemoth of surveillance, which I read that in Coffee and COVID. Great Substack to follow. He was talking about that Arctic frost. He's always the most optimistic, and he's a lawyer, and he's, so he's looking at it from a legal perspective, but he's saying this could be actually a gift to conservatives in regards to getting to a place where we would repeal the Patriot Act. That would be something that would be really interesting. Of course, the most optimistic.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to not bring this point up, but that made me go, I have to.
Okay.
Nixon, that's a good marker of saying possibly when the deep state took hold, because the fact that that would be grounds for stepping down in, what was that, 1970 something?
6, I want to say.
That was grounds for a president resigning in 76, but now it goes absolutely unnoticed. I'll tell you why it goes unnoticed, because that surveillance is not for the Democratic Party, it's for the state, the deep state. And so when you say, oh, this might be our chance to repeal the Patriot Act, watch how it doesn't get repealed, because the sellout establishment, possibly blackmailed representatives, will not do that, because their allegiance is to the deep state.
I believe it is possible with God.
Absolutely, and 100% it is. In closing, maybe, are we there? Close to
Quick. Go. What is the Patriot Act? Just give a little synopsis.
The Patriot Act is a giant piece of legislation that came to be post 9/11.
September 11th.
And it was, if there was one, off the top of my head, if there's one piece of legislation to repeal, if I got to pick, I would pick the Patriot Act. It allowed so many things. Domestic surveillance. So like the CIA, the NSA, they were not allowed to surveil U.S. citizens. And this actually allowed them to do it. And then they proceeded to say that, no, there's going to be this special court that
FISA
will keep it from happening. And then that's where Edward Snowden came in, because years later, he...
An American hero.
We
Edward should have a
Snowden,
puppy named after him.
How did we miss
that
that
one? How did we miss that?
Betsy Ross, you're now Edwarda Snowden. He, absolutely, American hero. He was an NSA employee and blew the whistle that actually they're telling the American people that they're not doing any of this stuff, and it's actually like 100 times worse than you think.
Yeah, you could imagine.
And he escaped, thank goodness,
to Russia.
Eventually to Russia, by way of, I think, Hong Kong and all this stuff. And ironically, the safest place for him ended up being Russia.
The enemy of your enemy.
And he is
your
still
friend.
there to this day. Mm-hmm. But the Patriot Act is a disgusting, 9/11 was a false flag that was allowed to happen.
Weaponized empathy.
Brought on 20 plus years of war, trillions of dollars of spending, the majority of our nation's debt now is global war on terror debt.
We didn't have the Homeland Security Department. I mean, departments of the government.
Yeah,
expanded.
The TSA, all this stuff, whatever. That's beyond the point. But basically, the Patriot Act just absolutely gutted and compromised our government, because it really it cemented in the institutions and tentacles of the deep state to be able to be what it is today. So when you say like, oh, maybe we'll repeal the Patriot Act, I'm like, I don't believe we'll repeal the Patriot Act without Washington, D.C. being burned to the ground. Like, I don't see any...
We're not suggesting
God will
anybody
have to
will
do it.
burn Washington, D.C. to the
No,
ground.
I'm not suggesting... I'm saying that's how important the
Yeah.
Patriot Act would be
Is to the deep
D.C.
state. That's very true.
I'm sorry, to the deep state. So, yes.
Okay.
But
It could happen.
in closing, we didn't talk about it that much right this moment, but we really are going to be pointed at what can we do, calls to action as Christians.
What to be watching, what to be paying attention to, how to apply it.
Yeah, in order to be effective, right, we have to recognize reality for what it is. We have to kind of see through the narratives, and then we need to come up with ideas of how to respond in a godly way.
Yeah.
And
The intersection of culture and Christianity.
it's good.
Biblical application to our walk in this world.
But, Wendy and I have continually over and over again been called and convicted on this. There is a role for us to play. I really believe that there is something. It's a lie of the enemy to believe that there's just nothing you can do about it. And again, this is what did you say? The intersection of culture and Christianity. Mm-hmm. The world, what is going on in the world this is God's creation. This is God's world first, And so, well, yes, it is of the world. The Lord is working here, and it takes, to some degree, kind of having your eyes open to the world in order to grow the kingdom and to know where to move and how to move.
Yeah.
And I think we're living in this time that is just so perfectly illustrates that with Charlie's martyrdom and the assassination there, and how the Lord is moving in the church right now, and in the culture, and there's so much. There's scary things like the Charlie Kirk stuff, and then there's the movement in the church, and there's Forrest Frank, and there's just like so many encouraging things, but it's a time of
It's an exciting time to be a Christian.
Practicing Christian, not just a believing Christian. Yeah. There's a walk to walk out.
Oh, I think this was our tagline. Turning faith from a noun into a verb. This is where you take it from a thing on the shelf to an action in your life.
That's good.
Thanks for tuning in.
We're going to do that together.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on the Modern Watchman podcast.
Remember, truth isn't just something we believe, it's something we live out every day.
Stay alert, stay discerning, and don't lose sight of the hope we have in Christ.
Until next time,
be watchmen.
Well. So I think they're working. Something's working.
Sounds good.
Oh, I just don't like my hair right now.
What do I do with my beverage? You cannot drink an icy drink right now. You cannot drink it. I'm serious. You can't drink it.
Listen to this, everybody.
You're being so... I don't have patience for this tonight.
I'll do that. I won't. Clinkety clink.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, my mouth's itching, so I'm doing a lizard.
A lizard?
Yeah, I don't realize it like when I scratch the roof of my mouth.
And that your neck does that?
Oh, it's like a lizard or a gecko
or
something.
frog. Like a bullfrog.
Lots of reptile amphibians do it. Wouldn't that be funny if we did a podcast for a year and thought our mics were working and they weren't? It's press times. No, that matters. What you do there matters. So don't just be doing random things. It's oh, 3 seconds is pairing on that thing on the receiver. There's a button on the receiver. Oh. I think they're just already paired.
Oh, what is green light on that?
Noise canceling enabled.
What does that mean?
×3 starts and stops recording.
The recording has started.
3 seconds power on and off.
It is on right now.
Yeah, so...
Did you start it?
No, it's... Oh, you didn't start it? Oh,
The
you must
video?
have automatically started it with the mic?
I guess.
Starts and stop recording. We'll try it again. Hold on, let me do it.